Oh, welcome to the Gamblin Gauchos. I'm Rob Bro. He's Kyle Jacobson. He's Money Mainville. We also have two guests today from the Frogs Insider Podcast with the Republic of Texas Football Podcast Network, Jamie and Melissa. How you guys doing?
I was wondering if you were going to try the last name, Rob, since you didn't ask me pregame. So it's pretty smart just to stick to Melissa. It's a good call on your part.
Well, I was more worried about Marcus, so.
Oh, nailed it. Amazing. Impressive.
Incredible. I'm doing great, Rob. Thanks for asking.
We've had you on the podcast before. I just thought we were on first name basis here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or we could just call you Coach Melissa. I like that.
That works too. Listen, I get called a lot worse than that, so I'll pretty much answer to anything that's not, that keeps the G rating.
Hey, we have a family show here, as we always say. Let's see. Okay. Let's start with TCU here. We always try to get some kind of tail end of last season expectations, and then into this season. After the national championship appearance, you go into last year. What were the expectations, and I guess maybe the disappointments from last year, and then how do you move on from those?
How long do you have?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure JB put on the record 12-0 was a possibility. I think I remember hearing that in an August podcast, JB. But
we have enough. We have as much time as y'all need to talk about TCU disappointment. So please,
if
you need an hour or two, feel free.
I went back and watched that Aaron Green catch multiple times last year just to make myself feel better.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Some technicality here had this week.
Yeah, it was like top moments in Big 12 history. I was like, dude, this is the one you picked.
I was here for it. What you guys don't know is I paid that account $100 to tweet that out. So, but yeah, no, I think last year's disappointment, going 5-7, missing a bowl, only becoming the second team in college football playoff, in the era of college football playoff, to miss a bowl game after reaching the CFP. It's not really the group you want to be a part of, and I think a lot of that came from Chandler Morris's play, the injury at quarterback, and then the defense being probably the worst defense CCU has seen on the field since prior to the Gary Patterson era. So going all the way back to the late 90s, really. And I think that the reason we had so much optimism heading into last year, at least from my perspective, because I didn't say 12-0, but I did say I could see this team getting to 10 wins, is the way Chandler Morris looked in fall camp. He is, without a doubt, the best quarterback in shorts that I have ever seen. And I wish nothing but the best for him at North Texas. I think he's going to do well. I think that offense is going to be able to put up some numbers. But the reality of the situation was he had the yips when he put the pads on and when he realized that he could be hit. And we saw that through the first half of last year. He goes down against Iowa State. Whatever happened against Kansas State happened. I've erased that from my memory. And then Josh Hoover does enough, I think, offensively the rest of the way, but the defense could really never get it done. And so you see TCU losing a lot of close games, a lot of breaks that went their way in 22, go against them in 23. Bada bing, bada boom. All of a sudden, you're 5-7. You're out of a bowl contention.
And I think everybody anticipated there would be obviously a significant step back. Like that wasn't a surprise, but I still think that getting to bowl eligibility was a fair expectation, probably a 7 or 8 win team. I mean, you don't lose a guy like Max Duggan who literally willed the Frogs across the finish line game after game and just replace him with Chandler Morris. But I think it was just how soft this team played. I mean, Jamie made great points about the defense, but there was no galvanizing factor in that locker room. And we've heard the guys talk about it a lot so far in this fall camp, how different the atmosphere, the vibes, the chemistry, and just the competitiveness is compared to a year ago. So there was a lot that was wrong with that 2023 team. I think Sonny has been very transparent in admitting where he made some mistakes, and not to make excuses, because 5-7 coming off a national championship game is inexcusable. But that season was really, really long, and it really hurt them when they had so much work to do in the transfer portal and on the recruiting trail. And they just never seemed to get their feet back under them heading into last season. And then, of course, Colorado happened, and it only really took one embarrassing loss for this team to kind of come apart at the seams.
That Colorado game was wild. And I had me thinking that, like, Prime was just, like, he had them top 25 out of the gates. I was like, okay, this is going to be fun to watch. And, like, that's obviously not who Colorado was by the end of the season.
Yeah. We're sorry. We apologize to all of college football for what we did for the first half of that season. It was our fault.
I wish I could have enjoyed it a little bit longer because I think y'all were 20.5 point favorites and lost at home, and I was like, that's great. That was the 11 a.m. kickoff. And then Baylor loses at home to Texas State as 17-point favorites. I was like, oh, this is shaping up to be a wonderful day.
What a day.
And then our rain delayed game at Wyoming, we lose as 12-point favorites. And I was like, well, that puts a little bit of damper on the in-state rivalry chatter that would have commenced. But is it fair to say that Sonny Dykes, through 2 years, one of them obviously extremely successful, one of them not so much, that he picked the wrong quarterback out of fall camp both years?
Yeah. I mean, I mean, it's hard to go back in hindsight, obviously. And Jamie was at fall camp for both of those seasons. I was commuting in, so it was only really there for games. But everything we've heard, and Jamie made that point too. Chandler Morris was almost inexplicably the best quarterback we've seen at TCU in shorts. So I think he had his reasons. And whatever those reasons weren't just what he saw day to day in August, but I think his relationship with Chad Morris and what the kind of quarterback Chandler was in high school. He was heavily recruited. He had all of the abilities. I don't think it was wrong to give him a shot over Josh Hoover, who was pretty under recruited last year and who was a redshirt freshman. I don't think anybody was surprised that Chandler was going to get that opportunity. But once again, we saw a quarterback come in at not the first half of the first game of the season and look a lot more comfortable pretty quickly compared to what the initial starter was.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying there, Melissa. I scratched the 2022 season out when it comes to Morris winning that quarterback battle because it was close in the fall. I think it really did take Sonny and his staff until about 2 weeks prior to that first game at Colorado to make a decision on who was going to be the starter. Morris goes down in the third quarter of that game, and by the time he's ready the week after Oklahoma, I think it was at Kansas that week, game days there, he's not coming back in. Max had played too well. And so it was more of a Wally Pipp situation there than really picking the wrong guy. Last year, though, I'll tell you, I mean, he would have been insane not to go with Chandler out of fall camp. He would have been crazy because, I mean, Josh Hoover, as good as he looked at times last season in game, he struggled in fall camp, and Chandler had an incredibly good fall camp. So if it had gone any other way, I think there would have been more questions from the folks that had been there than there were with hindsight. So, it's one of those things where you can look back on it and ask that question, and I think that's a genuinely good question to ask. But boots on the ground, man, I don't see it. I don't see how it could have played out any other way.
Let's get into a little bit of coaching as well. Second-year offensive coordinator, he should not be named, and then first-year defensive coordinator in Avalos. Is the scheme going to change this year with some new personnel? Obviously, like a brand-new offensive line with the transfers coming in. More defensively, I guess, what is the scheme going to look like here in 2024?
Think 3-3-5 last year, right? And just the sieve-like defense that was against the run for TCU, giving up, I think, 350, 400 rushing yards on the ground against Kansas State. Again, I don't remember anything about that game. It's not burned into my memory at all. Versus this really multiple front that Andy Avalos brings. If you go back to those late teens Oregon teams, he was the defensive coordinator up there. They do a lot of four-man front. They have this hybrid linebacker end position called the stud, where you've got maybe a little bit undersized defensive end who's mainly their job is to go murder in the backfield, which I really appreciate that role on a defense. So I think you're going to see a lot more multiple fronts, a lot of guys with hands in the ground, a lot more blitzing from different areas, a lot more confusion, a lot more hiding the defense rather than, it looks like TCU's going to rush 3 and drop 8 on this play. And so I like that from the defense. They've been working against what, like you said, Rob, a pretty reconstructed offensive line this fall. TCU will not have Cade Bennett, who they had kind of penciled in at left guard. He's out for the season with back surgery. They did bring in James Brockermeyer from Alabama, Carson Bruno from Louisiana Tech, Remington Strickland from Texas A&M. Those are 3 guys on the interior that we can expect to play quite a bit, along with Colton Deary, who transferred in last year from Maryland. But realistically, I think that we're still trying to see them solidify the guys along the offensive line there to figure out what the best 5 is. And the first 10 practices of fall camp, I don't have a problem saying it. The defense has gotten the better of the offense more often than not, and it has started up front. Melissa, I think you're gonna tee up what we saw on Friday night, though, which was the run game did look decent in that final scrimmage.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think you've seen.
We'll never know.
What have we seen, Melissa? Tell us.
I'm so excited to hear what she has to say.
Well, I guess while we wait on that.
So what I think she was going to say is that
yeah, go ahead.
the running game has at times looked really good. TCU did a scrimmage last night or Friday night. It was open to the media, so we got to be there. And they did a good job of blocking up front for the run game. Pass protection was a different story. They struggled quite a bit. But at this point, with what we know about, she's fully gone now. What we know about Kendall Briles' offense, sorry I said the name, is that he does like to run. He does like to get guys out in space in the flats. And that part of TCU's offense does look pretty effective so far in fall camp.
Let's talk a little bit about, we talked about the quarterback situation some, the rest of y'all's weapons. I think that in hindsight, maybe some TCU fans were a little bit dismissive of the impact of losing guys like Quentin Johnston and is it Darius Davis? Still had some good weapons last year with Jared Wiley, the running back who is now with the Chiefs. I'm blanking on his name as well. But what do y'all have from an offensive skill standpoint to complement the quarterback? And do you think it'll be improved compared to last year, about on par, or what's the expectation there?
It's a great question. And you're right. I think TCU fans underestimated losing QJ and Darius, not to mention Tay Barber was another wide receiver. So they lost their 3 leading receivers, their 2 leading rushers, and their starting quarterback off that 22 team last year. Probably should have seen more of a step back coming than we did. This year, you bring back Savion Williams, who has all the same tools as Quentin Johnston, just has never seemed to be able to string it together for multiple games at a time or entire season. He's fully healthy. He's looked really good in fall camp. You've got Dalen Wright, the transfer from Minnesota last year. You've got Eric McAllister, who came in from Boise State this offseason. He had over 50 catches and 800 yards in just 7 games with Boise State last year before he hit the portal midseason. So he's a guy that they're expecting a lot from. They got Drake Dabney, who was a tight end for Baylor last year, who put up some pretty good numbers to replace Jared Wiley. I think he's going to have a big impact on this offense. And then the guy that nobody's really talking about because they don't know him yet is Cam Cook. Redshirt freshman running back. He's looked great in fall camp. The staff is incredibly high on him. They were thinking ahead of spring ball about going and getting a running back out of the portal. And then they saw so much from Cam Cook in spring ball that they were like, we're good. We're gonna run with what we've got. So excited about these weapons. A lot of them aren't really proven in the Big 12 yet, and that is a big question mark. And I think, frankly, that includes Josh Hoover. We saw ups and downs from him in 6 games last year. He missed all of spring because he was injured. He was dealing with a little bit of a back injury, and we've only seen him for 10 practices in fall camp. He's looked okay. So I think the big question marks on the offense are about the skill position. I mean, it's just everything at this point with the offense. But, you got to hold out hope, I guess.
Talk to me about this offensive line. Again, I mentioned earlier, but 4 potentially transfers in to start right away. I think you said before the podcast or maybe early on the Colorado way there. You're preaching to the choir a little bit here with Texas Tech. They've also tried to do this a little bit in the last couple of years, and it hasn't worked out. So what kind of level are these guys transferring from? Are they Power 5 transfers? Are they Group of 5 transfers? What's going on?
So they've got 4 guys in that are going to play a lot along the offensive line. The first one is Bless Harris. He's a left tackle from Florida State. Highly rated guy on PFF. His issue was more injury-based. He's fully healthy. He's looked great in fall camp. He's probably been the most consistent offensive lineman that TCU has had. You've got Mike Nichols, who is the right tackle. He's a little young, a little unproven, but has pretty much solidified himself as the starting right tackle there. He was a kid that they recruited out of high school. They've had him for quite a while. Interior of the offensive line is the biggest question, and it has been for 2 years now since Steve Avila left and since Alana Lee left, with obviously Steve Avila being the starting left guard and now starting center for the I believe it's the Rams. That would love to have that guy back. But you've got Carson Bruno, who's from Louisiana Tech, who's kind of slotted in at right guard. You've got James Brockermeyer, who's probably going to end up slotted in at center. He transferred in this spring from Alabama. And then you've got Colton Deary, who transferred in from Maryland. He and Brockermeyer were going back and forth at center, kind of splitting snaps with the ones for most of fall camp. But today was actually the first time we saw Deary slide into that left guard spot, which had been occupied by Texas A&M transfer Remington Strickland. So Strickland has been, today for the first time, we saw Strickland taking snaps at left guard and at center with the twos, Brockermeyer at center with the ones, and then Deary at left guard with the ones. So a little bit of shuffling going on. I think that's going to end up being the starting five, though, for the Frogs along the offensive line. And you're right, though. The Colorado stuff, you don't want to do things the Colorado way at this point, really, in any way you break it down, whether that's recruiting along the offensive line or, I don't know, just trying to have a normal press conference. But it looks like, at least for this season, TCU is going to be portal heavy along the line.
Money, do you have any questions about the TCU offense before we go to the other side of the ball?
No, I think my only questions are defensively.
Oh, well, I'll let you kick us off on the defensive side of the ball then.
Yeah, I know you mentioned the defensive fronts, and I think TCU, you bring back Bud Clark, really good safety in the back end of the secondary, but you lose big guys like Nick Bradford, Josh Newton. Talk to me a little bit about the secondary that'll be kind of, in the pass coverage, trying to take away any gaps that the defensive line doesn't get to first.
Yeah, I think Bud is obviously one of the bigger names that people are going to remember, and he's had a great fall so far. I think it was really important for Andy Avalos to get him up to speed pretty quickly with the new defense, and he's done that. He's taken that challenge on and has looked really good. Abe Kamara is another guy that's returning, who they've slid him over to that kind of nickel safety position in this 4-2-5, and he's going to have a lot of opportunities to blitz and be creative in the run game, which I think suits his skill set. He's a big hitter. He loves popping pads with guys, so that'll be fun to see. Cornerback is a question mark at this point. They've lost Avery Helm and Vernon Glover, who were kind of penciled in as the 1 and 2 spots there at corner. They're banged up right now. They have not participated for about a week in fall camp. We don't really know when they're coming back. JT Broughton is a transfer from Utah. Lamarian James, from Old Dominion is another transfer who's getting a lot of reps at corner now. And then Cam Smith, a Memphis transfer who they've really liked, is playing safety. Jamel Johnson is another guy who played a little bit for TCU last year as a true freshman at that strong safety spot, who's been getting some reps with the ones as well. You've got the leadership ultimately with Bud and Abe, and then some new pieces in there as well. So they've looked good in fall camp. It's a decent receiving group that they're going up against every day. I think, though, especially in the one-on-ones, the receivers are getting the better of them. But when it comes to team, I think the secondary is holding its own.
I agree.
Nailed it. Don't worry, I talked about the run game for you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
We just pivoted to the defense, and Jamie kind of gave us an overview of the secondary. But what do you think about the front, not front seven, I guess, front six, and TCU's ability to stop the run, rush the passer? Melissa, what are your thoughts personnel-wise up front for the Frogs defense this year?
I think they'll be a lot more effective getting to the quarterback. That's something that has been a real bugaboo for TCU for the last several years, including the end of the Gary Patterson era as well. There's not going to be probably an elite pass rusher on that defense. I don't think there's an all Big 12 guy there, but there's a lot of guys that look really, really good. And the linebacking unit has a chance to be one of the best in the conference if they stay healthy. Just super dynamic and a lot of guys that can do a lot of different things. We've been super impressed with Cooper McDonald so far in fall camp. He made a great play, kind of tipped a pass up in the air, corralled it, took it back for I think maybe a pick six if they'd let him play it out. He looks really fast, and he's a big kid. The interior defense with Tymon Mitchell and Caleb Fox looks like it's going to be really solid, which should help shore up the run defense quite a bit. But it's going to be a matter of how those guys on the edge can get things done. I think we're relying a lot on, oh gosh, now I'm going to have to say it, Nana. We'll just call it, we're on first name basis on this podcast, right? Yeah.
Nana Osafo-Mensah, Notre Dame
Thank
transfer.
you.
Let's go.
Thank you, Jamie. Nana Osafo-Mensah, who, is a guy who was super talented coming out of high school in Fort Worth, out of Nolan Catholic, was heavily pursued by TCU, ended up at Notre Dame, and just never was really able to break through and be a big impact player there, but has a chance to be a guy here at TCU. So I'm super confident in the linebackers. Johnny Hodges looks like he's playing with a little bit extra spring in his step. He's never going to be a guy that's going to be able to cover, 15 yards down the field, but he's really solid in run defense, and he's as smart as they come when it comes to understanding the defense, even as they install this new system. And he's been playing with a real chip on his shoulder in fall camp. He has been getting salty with guys. He's been hitting guys a little harder than he's supposed to. And he seems kind of, you always got to have that grinder, that lunch pail kid in fall camp that's willing to do the dirty work. And he has been very, very vocal and very, very physical so far this camp. So him along with Nnamdi Obiezar, like the talent is absolutely there in that front line. It's just a matter of how's that talent going to translate when they're not going up against, no offense, but TCU's offensive line.
I say that to myself all the time here with Texas Tech.
Yeah. You just don't know. Like it's a brand new offensive line again for the most part. Like it's pretty much rebuilt in the portal, and so it's really hard to look ahead and say how much of this is like Jamie said, the defense has seemed ahead of the offense so far these first couple of weeks, but how much of that is because the offense still has a lot of work to get to do up front?
Personally, I think it's mostly just because Johnny Hodges has fully reached his Brian Bosworth era.
Yes.
With the one leg pants and then the cutoff jersey and the bleach blonde hair, straight out of 1987. It's glorious.
Incredible.
Phenomenal.
Can I say something here at the risk of offending some? Is this a safe place?
This is a safe place.
We're in the tree of trust, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like that guy. He was in Lubbock last year, hit Taj out of bounds, hit the quarterback late, was twisting our running back's leg after the play. Running back retaliated, kicked him, got a 15-yard penalty, which I know you can't retaliate. So I don't think this chip on his shoulder is new. I feel like I witnessed it last year, and I kind of wanted that guy to cool his jets a little bit. That's all.
He actually talked about that today. We had media availability with him this morning, and I kind of asked him about that because, I've watched him. He hit a guy after the whistle, a TC receiver, and he got kind of lit up by the coaching staff. And it's just like, and he said, it's really important when you put the helmet on that you're a different dude. And that guy off the field with the pads off is just cool and calm and collected as they come, just delightful and enjoyable. But no, yeah, he's a little bit of a word that we won't say to keep this a family-friendly podcast, but when that dude's playing for your team, you love it. When he's playing against your team, you hate it, and he's thankfully, he's playing in purple. He almost had purple hair too, he revealed today, which I would have been all about. So, yeah, he's a feisty one. I mean, he's a lacrosse player. Lacrosse players are dirty. This dude was a D1 lacrosse player. Of course, he might be a little salty, and I'm okay with it.
And I can respect that. Like you said, if he was wearing red and black, he'd be one of my, a fan favorite. You're seeing some of that with, I don't know if you'll know this, but Patrick Mahomes, the greatest player in the world, he went to Texas Tech, and you're seeing that Mahomes fatigue in the NFL. Like number 4 player in the league, it's just because people are sick of him, and so. I don't know. If you went to TCU, you'd be really proud of Patrick Mahomes. But
I'm proud of all the videos Patrick Mahomes posts where he's practicing and working out at TCU.
Yeah,
he's an honorary frog at this point, so we can all love him together.
Y'all can put him in your ring of honor as well.
Yeah, we'll put his jersey up on the wall right next to Andy Dalton's because they're basically the same, right?
That'd be hilarious. What else? What other ground do we have to cover, guys?
I'd like to look at the schedule. I think Colorado has a pretty tough schedule. I don't know that TCU they don't have an easy schedule like Texas Tech, I would say, but they do miss Kansas State. But they are at Kansas, which is at Arrowhead, at Utah.
Speaking of Patrick Mahomes.
Speaking of Patrick, at Utah, Stanford, the ACC matchup with Stanford and SMU, two classic ACC Big 12 matchups there in the non-conference. You do play Arizona, Oklahoma State, Utah, Kansas. As I said, they're in the top 5 of the Big 12. Texas Tech as well at home. Where would you rank this TCU schedule amongst Big 12 schedules, and what are your thoughts on it?
It's pretty middle of the pack, I would think. I mean, I think that Stanford game, it's a pretty big spread. I think they're going to be a little bit tougher than they're getting credit for. They're going to be solid in the trenches, and they return, I believe, the third most production of anybody in the NCAA. So I expect that to be a close game until the fourth quarter, and then hopefully TCU doesn't turn it over. They pull away late. That SMU game is the last one that's on the schedule for the foreseeable future, and it's in Dallas. So as much as I don't believe in SMU as a football program, I do think that they will give their best swing in that game. So the non-conference, isn't a rollover, but it's a non-conference season. Well, let's not disrespect the LIU Sharks out of Long Island University, but it's definitely a non-con that the Frogs could go undefeated in, or they could be 2-1. Hey, they took Baylor to the wire there for a half, I think, a year ago. So, but yeah, I mean, you don't have to leave the state a whole heck of a lot. Like I said, you miss Kansas State. You get Oklahoma State, Texas Tech at home. I think that's really important. Arizona at the end of the season could be good. I think UCF is a sleeper pick for me as a potential conference championship participant, but you get them early. It's not the hardest schedule in the league. It's not the easiest. It's pretty middle of the pack. And I think that's why the spread in Vegas is at 7.5, because I think that's probably right about what this schedule tells you TCU can or should be. I do think there's a chance for them to be better than that if the offensive line comes together. But as we saw a year ago, there's also certainly a chance for them to be worse than that too.
I'll say this: Melissa's a closet Stanford homer, so she's giving them way more credit than they need in this moment. She loves Troy Taylor so much.
It's true. He's a Sacramento State's own Troy Taylor, and I do have some good Stanford connections. So they're my second favorite team in college football.
It's true. TCU's going to cover that spread. FanDuel's got it at 8.5 right now. You can throw down on that and feel real good about it. But I will say the Big 12 portion of TCU's schedule can be a little intimidating when you look at it on the whole. Oh, Chris, we can get to that in a second, brother. You got to go to gofrogs.com and purchase a Purple Party plan where you get tickets to multiple other football games as well. Do whatever the hell you want to do with those tickets, but you can keep the ones to TCU, Texas Tech. Make sure you wear your purple, be rowdy, loud, and proud, and get there early enough for the pregame happy hour as well, where all beers, I believe, are roughly 50% off. But back to the task at hand here, talking about TCU's Big 12 schedule. I think the question marks around what Arizona will be coming into this league, I think those are all fair. What Gus Malzahn is still continuing to build at UCF, kind of like Melissa said, they seem like they could be pretty scary. They're recruiting at a really, really good level right now. I believe it's TCU and UCF 1 and 2 the last several seasons in the 24/7 recruiting rankings. In the conference. So that's a really fun game that I'm looking forward to. Night game at the Carter's always going to be fun, always going to have energy. How well this team responds to playing on the road, I think will really truly define their season. If they struggle, then we're not going to have a good time. If they're great, then I think TCU's in for quite a treat. I have them at 8-4. I think they drop a couple games that they probably, a fumble here, a pick there. Maybe some things go wrong late and they don't quite get it done to get to 8-4. But if the bounces go their way again, this could be a really fun season for Frog fans.
I want to take that clip at the beginning and just send it directly to Jeremiah Donati and just tell him what a great ambassador for TCU Jamie Plunkett is. Give this man a raise.
Donati, Jeremiah Donati, give me a raise because you absolutely signed my paychecks as it is for sure.
You ever get envelopes of cash under the table?
Yeah, but they got SMU's address on them. So if I ever get caught,
and some other residue, I'm sure, but
they'll just get the death penalty again.
We do need to talk about that a little bit. SMU this year and next, and then never again. Is that true?
Just this year.
Or this year.
This is the last year that they have a game scheduled. I anticipate them playing again at some point. But the reality of the situation is, I think TCU fans, for the most part, are over that rivalry. The last time TCU played at SMU, the lines to get in were over an hour long. They ran out of water in the first half in the entire stadium. The sewage system backed up, so it's a family-friendly show. Brown water flooding the lower concourse by like the end of third, early fourth quarter. It's a miserable place to try and watch a football game, and it was pretty much all purple in the stands. So there is no reason for TCU to go back there until they improve that situation. That I mean, you're in the state of Texas, and you can't put a good foot forward when it comes to your football stadium. Like, what the hell are we doing here?
Didn't they just get $159 million for something? Why aren't we
some sort of end zone thing where they used to have a lawn because they couldn't fill up a whole circle worth of seats, kind of like Baylor had a tarp. They just put grass out there, and now they're putting like these really expensive seats that someone's going to tailgate and never sit in. So
at least Kansas is getting plumbing.
Yeah. Yeah, it is historic. It is a rivalry. It's a trophy game. It's all of those things. It's one of the oldest rivalries in college football. But at the end of the day, even with SMU joining the ACC, there's still not a lot of value to TCU playing them. I mean, if you look at last season, one of SMU's best seasons ever, one of TCU's worst, and TCU doubled them up. And to get smoked like that by last year's TCU team, I think says a lot about where SMU's program is. So I'm going to be interested from afar to watch what they do in the ACC. But I'm perfectly content with it being from afar for a while. But with the future of college athletics so nebulous, I feel like nothing would surprise me as far as what that rivalry looks like in the future.
Money, do you have anything else for these fine frogs of Funkytown? I have one more question, but if you've got anything, feel free.
Bring it, Money. Let's hear it. Bring us the tough ones.
So Jamie gave us 8-4 as a record prediction. Melissa, what would you say? And then what do you see as the games that could potentially be coin flips on that schedule right now?
Well, I'm kind of set in that 8-4 as well. I've been really vacillating between 8-4 and 7-5. I'd be okay, I think, with either, just to show the program is moving in the right direction. To me, I think that stretch that you kind of talked about in the middle of the season, where you've got Kansas, Utah, Texas Tech, Baylor, all kind of Oklahoma State, I think is in that mix too. That's really the season, the stretch that's going to make or break how successful this season is. I don't think Utah's a coin flip. I think Utah will be, pretty significantly favored potentially in that game, but how TCU holds up in that game will tell me a lot about who this team can be when they get to the difficult stretch. Tech to me is going to be a coin flip. I think Oklahoma State is probably a coin flip game there as well. The Kansas game is going to be really interesting because I have no idea what Jayhawk fans will do in Arrowhead and what that's going to look like. That stadium is so loud and so impressive when it's full of Chiefs fans. I don't know that Kansas, depending on how they start, will be able to fill that up or make it that kind of environment. So, those are the ones that are really intriguing. The Utah game to me is the one that I've got circled on the calendar of we'll see who we are. But I'm really intrigued by the Kansas game, the Texas Tech game. And I don't ever like playing Baylor when they're bad. I don't ever like playing Baylor. I really don't like playing them when they're bad. And Dave Aranda is in desperation mode. And so it's the same thing as SMU. They are going to give everything they have in that one. And it will be just slightly terrifying. Because even TCU's best team struggled to beat that really bad Baylor team down in Waco in 2022. And we overcame, a last-second field goal. And I personally overcame the worst case of food poisoning I've ever had. So we'd all dug deep that day. We all dug deep.
It's all right, though, Melissa. Baylor lost one of the 2 sleeper agents we planted down there recently, so Gary might not be there. Gary might not be there anymore, but hey, they still got TCU sleeper agent Jared Anderson on deck. So,
and we've got Baylor sleeper agent Drake Dabney. So this is a win-win for TCU.
That's the only Baylor sleeper agent TCU has.
Not y'all's offensive coordinator. Okay, final question, and this is a sincere question. I'm going to leave it very open-ended, so as not to lead y'all toward one response or another. Sonny Dykes, without Garrett Riley as his offensive coordinator, is 55-63 against FBS competition as a head coach in his career. That's a large sample size. That's 120 games almost, so 10 full seasons. What do you make of that?
Do you want me to go or you want to go? Okay. That's a great question, and I think, like you said, it's a large enough sample size that you have to really kind of dig into it and figure out the why behind it. I think one of the main whys behind those numbers, the fact that he was at Cal, and the situation at Cal was a challenge for him. I think he was out of his element being in a place where he couldn't really recruit Texas, where a lot of his connections are, a lot of his roots are. He had more of an ability to recruit out of the state when he was at Louisiana Tech, and we saw he had pretty good success at Louisiana Tech, especially by Louisiana Tech standards. And so, I think that what we've seen from him from a recruiting perspective, what he was left with at the end of the Gary Patterson era, outside of Duggan and Quentin and Darius and all of the guys that really helped get them to that national championship game. The next class, I mean, the cupboard was pretty bare, if we're being honest, especially from a trenches standpoint. I think beyond that team, when Avila, Wes Harris, and Ali all graduated, they had, I believe, 9 offensive linemen on the entire roster at that point. And that's just, a little bit of recruiting malpractice, I think, by the previous staff to put them in that position. So what we've seen him do over the first 2 full 2.5 recruiting cycles that he's been here is a focus on the trenches. He's got a lot of really young talent that he's hoping to develop now. So this is likely the last time we're going to have to see kind of a portal puzzle piece put together offensive line. And I think the reality, too, is that you're looking at a Big 12 that doesn't really need to air it out like Garrett Riley likes to air it out anymore. I mean, we've seen Kansas State go full NDSU with Chris Kleiman as their head coach. We've seen dual threat quarterbacks at Kansas, dual threat quarterbacks at not Oklahoma State, because Mike Gundy will never change, and God bless him for that. But you've seen a lot of offensive shift, and I think Sonny's in that position now where he's got to kind of figure out how does he make that shift. I think the current offensive coordinator is a step in that direction to say, hey, we don't need to throw it 50 times a game to try and win. We can have a good defense that keeps the opponent to 20 to 24 points. We can run the ball. We can control some clock. We can score 30 and win a lot. And now, will that happen this year? Hopefully, from a TCU perspective. I know that TCU fans want that, but I would say back to the original question, the record. I think a lot of that had to do with his discomfort in California and the lack of support from the administration up there. I think every coach, including Justin Wilcox, has felt that since Sonny Dykes, and I don't see that changing for Cal anytime soon, even with the extra boost of cash they're going to get from UCLA. And I think if you look at his La Tech stuff in a vacuum, it looks solid for what La Tech is as a program. And I think year 3 is going to be a really definitive year for Sonny Dykes. I think he'll be able to break a lot of those questions and concerns, those stereotypes. But he could also confirm them if the season doesn't go the way he wants it. So I think that's a great question, Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's perfectly fair to ask questions about Sonny Dykes because at this point in his career, we still have questions as to who exactly he is as a head coach. And I think part of that is because he's such a CEO mentality and he does put so much trust into his coordinators and allows them to do their thing. I mean, we saw that with Joe Gillespie and what that looked like a season ago. And even Kendall Briles, TC ran the fastest, more plays than I think anybody in the country, or were in the top 2. And Josh Hoover, when he did come in, threw more than any other quarterback in the country in that small sample size. And so this, what I think we've seen him talk about openly and we've seen him actively do, is to be less of a, kind of sit on the man in the high castle kind of a position and get a little bit more hands-on and have a little bit more say in how things are operating. And again, the proof will be in the pudding on August 30th when they travel to Palo Alto. But I think Sonny's also very aware that people are putting him under a microscope to a degree and they're asking those questions. And I do think he has something to prove. And I think he's definitely dedicated and focused on proving that. He's not the type that's going to sit in his office and be content with the 2022 run. I think he was embarrassed, frankly, by last season. And we've seen the way that he's adjusted his style both on the field and also in hiring. I mean, there's 474 guys wearing some type of TCU gear and some type of administrative or coaching role, it feels like, at fall camp every day. I mean, the hiring boom that they went on after last season really told me that not only was Sonny Dykes looking to make sure that every aspect of his program was being looked at with a detailed eye, but that TCU was going to be willing to throw their money where their mouth was and support him in that way. Even bringing in Todd Graham and Dana Holgerson to look at the opposite sides of what they're used to doing. I mean, it has kind of added a tenor and a weight to these fall camp practices. So I have questions. You know, you could, the wild swings between 2022 and 2023 don't tell us anything about how Sonny Dykes is going to build the program at TCU. But to me, this is kind of year one of where the expectations start, especially in the new look Big 12, without having Oklahoma and Texas kind of lording over the conference in whatever way they felt like doing. So it's going to be really interesting to see how his words turn into action. But he's really said the things you'd want him to hear, and he's done the things you'd want him to do. Now he just has to get his team to come alongside him and win some games.
Yeah, shout out to Dana Holgerson. That guy rocks.
Oh my God, amazing. It's a happy
That's
day of
so
my
weird
life.
that he's in Fort Worth.
It's funny. It's so funny. You can tell the difference in personalities between him and Todd Graham, too, based on where they were positioned on Friday during the scrimmage. They did a scrimmage in the stadium. Todd Graham sweating his ass off, standing next to Sonny, taking notes the whole time. And his task is to poke holes in the offense. As a defensive mind, how would you poke holes in this offense and then give that feedback directly to the OC, which I think is really smart. Dana Holgerson sitting right next to Kate Dykes in the club seats, feet kicked up on the table, also taking notes, but from a wildly different perspective, hair flowing in the breeze. All is so good. It's
you
so
guys
good.
would like Lubbock would be very proud of Dana Holgerson's current hairstyle. It's a beautiful thing.
I'll say this: he looks healthy.
Yeah.
He looks like a healthy version of Dana. That we got to actually talk to him and Todd on Thursday following practice, and he sounded and looked like a man who has found a little bit of peace in the 8 months that he hasn't been at Houston, which is really cool to see.
Was Todd wearing his Britney Spears mic?
I have not seen the Britney Spears, but I will say, like, I had expectations of what talking to Todd Graham would be like, and I was completely wrong. He was delightful, and he talked about the history of Texas football, and his ties are so deep to DFW, and he was a Texas high school football player and played for, he was, it's the same thing, you know, and I had a conversation with a certain administrator at TCU who shall remain nameless, but the difference between Dana and Todd of guys who maybe lost their jobs and humbled themselves in order to give them a new opportunity and to look at not only a program but themselves in the mirror versus maybe a guy who's struggling to do that and has had to bounce around because it's really hard to go from being a head coach to a consultant. And I think Dana and Todd have come in really with the right attitudes, and I think they're being very helpful to TCU because of it.
Yeah, maybe that guy was at Texas for a year, then left and they won the Big 12, then had his contract canceled by Baylor a couple weeks ago, and now who knows? The sky is the limit for this Baylor Bears team now that Gary's not there, I guess.
Whoa, I did not say any names.
No, you didn't, but I did,
anonymous,
because the year after he left TCU, they made the national championship. The year after he left Texas, they won the Big 12, and now he's gone from Baylor. What's going to happen with the Bears down in Waco? I don't know, but throw some money down on those boys.
Dana
Did the trifecta by going to SMU, by the way?
Oh, that would honestly make me so happy.
Look, if SMU fans want him, here my thing has always been the way that it ended at TCU. Brother, you built your own house, like you and then you threw rocks all around it, and go do what you want to do. If you want to still coach, go coach. You want to take your wife to Africa on another African safari, go do that. But don't show up at the sideline of a TCU basketball game 1 week before you take the Baylor job like you did this past fall, and don't keep coming to TCU tailgates and kicking it up with TCU folks when you've publicly, not with words but with actions, kind of disparaged the university that has a statue of you outside of the stadium. Don't give people opportunities to go put Baylor shirts on that thing anymore. Like, Jesus Christ, come on now.
At least there's no hard feelings about any of it, though.
No.
We're all doing great.
Like I said,
fine.
I'm totally over that and the Kansas State game from last year. It's fine.
Dana must be just, he's like Mr. Big 12 at this point. He's been at Tech, Houston twice, Oklahoma State, West Virginia, TCU. He just loves this conference, and like if he leaves one job for either on his own terms or somebody else's terms, he just goes somewhere else in the Big 12. And now there's 4 more schools he can make his way to eventually. So.
Can you imagine him with Coach Prime?
No,
that would
I don't.
be that to me is what I would like to see next. Yeah,
I want to see him be your Mark's deputy at some point.
Oh gosh.
Just say screw it, stop working at the team level, get to the conference level like you've been dreaming of, you know?
Yeah.
We're still working on those Big 12 naming rights. Maybe this is the Red Bull Big 12 or something. Who knows?
From your
The
lips
Dana
to God's ears.
Holgerson Red Bull Big 12.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm still mad that we went to the Totino's Big 12 press conference and did not get a single pizza roll that entire week. I'm still upset about that. We've got some work to do. Brett, if you're listening, which I know you are,
100%.
because this is the Gambling Gauchos podcast, and we know Brett is tapped in. If you're going to call us, whatever our naming rights are going to be, please throw some of that our way.
Look, we got a coffee mug, Melissa. I don't know how much more you want.
It's a
from
really
that gift
cool
bag.
coffee mug. It was a really
huge
good coffee
bag.
mug. Yeah.
Like the bag was the size of the box that a PS5 comes in, and in it, a coffee mug like this,
and a
this
short
big.
one. Yeah, but it's really cool.
Like an
I really
8-ounce
like it.
espresso mug with all of these cheesy Big 12 logos on it. Unbelievable.
I still like
gotta
18,
have your coffee, though.
Yeah, I still like 18 notebooks, just like in defiance. I just took every notebook that was left on the table after the second day. It was great. So if you need a Big 12 notebook, I'm your person. It's in a box somewhere in my garage. I have no idea where, but I have them.
I'm still using my Big 12 pen from last year.
Oh yeah, I stole a bunch of those too, Rob. So if you need a backup, I got you somewhere in a box in my garage, probably.
My go-to pen is still the LA hotel pen from the national championship.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one.
I should probably throw it away. It hasn't served us
Maybe
really
it's
well.
cursed. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave that alone.
Thank you.
All right. I think that's it. Jamie, thanks for the Alan Bowman slander a little bit earlier, talking about running quarterbacks. Melissa, you used the word vacillate earlier. I know what it means, but just for the audience, can you explain that word a little bit?
Yeah, I'm going to do this for money. I think money needs to know. Vacillate's kind of going between one version or the other, or one side or the other. So it's flip flopping, basically. I like to. I'm in education, so every once in a while I have to sound like I might be intelligent, but really it is. I have a word of the day calendar. I just flip it, whatever that word is. I make sure to use in conversation.
Yeah, but can you spell it though?
VASICILITE. I was wrong. I missed it.
So wrong.
Thanks.
VACILLATE. Come on now.
Okay, copywriter.
It's me.
All right, let us know where we can find the great information and the podcast, and we'll get you guys going.
Yeah, follow us on Instagram at Frogs Insider, on TikTok at Frogs Insider. I'm going to get Jamie to start doing TikTok dances. That's my goal on the sidelines. It's going to happen.
Absolutely not.
We're debating if we're going to get our Twitter up and rolling. And then, of course, the Frogs Insider podcast, which you can find anywhere you find podcasts, both on the Frogs Insider podcast feed or the Republic of Football, Dave Campbell's Republic of Football network podcast feed as well. You can follow me at The Coach Melissa. You can follow Jamie at Frog Preacher on Twitter. We've been posting lots of great content from fall camp, which has been a ton of fun. Lots of our YouTube channel as well as Frogs Insider, where you can like and subscribe and get all of the information that we know Texas Tech fans want to know about TCU football.
You know, it's football season too, because all of the engagements across our socials are up like 800% over the last 2 weeks, and you just absolutely love to see it.
You love to see it.
All right, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it was cute when you guys said 30 minutes, by the way. I thought that was adorable, because Jamie and I have never been able to do anything for less than an hour. So actually, congratulations. This is probably the shortest we've ever done anything together. So well done. Well done.
We looked at each other dead in our eyes a couple weeks ago on StreamYard and said, all right, we're going to keep this one to 30. And I think we got to 55 or something like that before we cut it off. So
miraculous.
But appreciate you fellas. Can't wait to talk to you more during the season. We'll have you on our show as well at some point. And we're looking forward to that game as always when you guys come out to Fort Worth.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Thanks,
Sounds
guys.
good. Thanks, y'all.
All right, that was Frogs Insider.
Hey, we got to switch this up. This looks weird. There you go. All right.
All right, hold on. Now we're back. Now we're home.
That like freaked me out for some reason. It's like when you open your camera and it's on front facing mode. You're like, whoa, hang on there.
You don't like that? How about this one?
That's very, all up in your grill.
No, I don't want to. Here, hold on.
That's a Rob Bro show.
Oh, hold on. I've messed everything up now. How do I? Now this is. I was trying to make you the. All right. This is the Gamblin Gauchos. We'll have a couple more things to talk about here. We just got done with TCU. Thoughts on the Horned Frogs there, Kyle?
Sounds very open-ended. I don't know if they sounded that certain, like how good they're going to be. And to the degree that they were certain that it was going to be in that 7 or 8 win range, feels like I feel like half the conference kind of has that same expectation. We've talked about the parity in the middle of this conference. So TCU, to me, like at least going into the season, and of course things can change, is like one of those 6 or 7 teams that you line up against anybody else in the Big 12. If you're at home, you're a 3-point favorite. If you're on the road, you're a 3-point dog. And I think the amount of depth and parity in this conference, because of teams like TCU and Texas Tech for that matter, is going to make it a lot of fun. Like there's no, I guess maybe Utah, Kansas State have kind of emerged as like favorites, but not nearly as much as we see in some of the really top-heavy conferences. And then even if those two are just head and shoulders better than everybody else, I think there's going to be a ton of competition and jockeying for position below them. So every Saturday should be filled with good matchups. I think teams like TCU kind of epitomize that in a lot of ways.
Is TCU closer to Texas Tech or Baylor? Expectation-wise.
I would say Tech.
Yeah, me too.
Most of the stuff I've seen out there, I guess this speaks to how fast things can change. Just what are we now? 20 months from a national championship game appearance, 19 months. I guess I see TCU picked below Tech most places, both Vegas and pundits, with Baylor being third of those 3. But that's a little surprising. I would say TCU is more on par with Tech, with Baylor like a rung below. Again, this is all in August, and it's a 16-team conference in the portal era. There's going to be some wild swings. Like there's going to be teams that suck that we had no indication of that going in. There's going to be teams that are like 9-2 the last weekend of the season that we never suspected. So, but I would say going in, gun to my head, I would say TCU is closer to Tech than Baylor.
All right. There was a couple of things I wanted to do here on this podcast, but I forgot to tell you guys about it, even though we talked about it earlier. So I'm going to spring something on you. You prepared for this? You ready?
Was born ready.
I want you to give me the top 5 passers in the Big 12. And I would like to have you do it in order. Is this something you can complete in the next 5 minutes?
You mean like predict them for 2024?
For 2024, yes.
Okay, Money, let's work together to get our 5, and then we can rank them.
I've got a list of quarterbacks if you need me to give them to you.
I think Shedeur Sanders is thought of in that territory. I think a healthy Cam Rising is thought of in that territory. I think a healthy Jalen Daniels, which that never seen that for a full season, would be in that territory. Rocco Becht, maybe?
Rocco Becht for sure. Noah Fafita at Arizona.
Yeah, I kind of skipped some of the newcomers there. Yeah.
Alan Bowman was the leading passer last year in the Big 12.
No, he wasn't.
I'm pretty sure he was. Let me see.
There's no way.
Hold on. Big 12. Keep going.
Well, no, I think so. Yeah, Fafita and Shedeur, I think, are locks. I think there's a lot of debate after that, though. Like, if Morton stays healthy in this system, I think he would be top 5 in yards. He might not be top 5, like, perception-wise. Same with, like, Dogovan at Houston. I mean, he's getting NFL draft buzz.
So it's Quinn, Gabriel, Bowman.
With how many yards?
And Bowman played less games, but he had way more attempts. 3,460 yards was the leading passer in the Big 12. Rocco Becht was 3rd or 4th, I guess, behind those. Returning quarterbacks, it's Bowman, Becht, Donovan Smith through the top 3. Garrett
Okay.
Green, 4th.
Yeah, and he missed some time because of injury. I think it's well established on this podcast that I think Garrett Green is a dude. So, Rob, don't spoil this because you've got his numbers pulled up. Money, do you know what Alan Bowman's touchdown to INT ratio was last year? Bonus points if you know each number exactly.
Ooh. I'm going to go. I'll go 3-1.
Now, what would you consider to be like you're thinking of a good college quarterback, like a second team All Big 12 quarterback who had a good season? What would his touchdown to INT ratio be?
I would say at least 4-1.
Okay. So like 40 touchdowns, 10 INTs. Alan Bowman, Rob, you can double check me on this, was basically 1-to-1, 15 touchdowns, 14 INTs last year.
That's true.
So this is where like total passing yards to me does not nearly tell the story when we're talking like top 5 quarterbacks. But anyway, okay, Shador and Noah Fafita are up there. Cam Rising, so 3 of the 4 newcomers. Who else do you want to throw in there, Money? Because I feel pretty good about those 3.
I think Rocco Becht.
I feel pretty good about that one too.
And I don't know what they have in the running game either. Like West Virginia, Garrett Green can use his legs. I think K-State will run the ball a lot. I think Iowa State will air it out, and I think he'll get some good yardage through that system.
Yeah, they've got some good weapons too. And they didn't start throwing the ball last year till like game 3 or 4. So most of his numbers were after that. I think that's a good top 4. Shoot, who should we put 5? I mean, I'm inclined to say Morton if he plays 10 plus games, honestly. And that might sound crazy. That might sound like a homer pick, but we run so many plays. There's no indication we're about to run the ball on 55% of those plays. And so if he does stay healthy, even if it's not terribly efficient or explosive or elite, when you look at per play, per drive, I still think he'll get there. Kind of like Alan Bowman somehow got there last year. I think Baron Morton's a lot better than Alan Bowman, by the way.
It's bold. So who are your 5? Shador
Sanders, Shadwar, Noah Fafita, Cam Rising, Rocco Becht, Baron Morton.
Are you going in that order?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
But I wouldn't be surprised at all if Jalen Daniels stays healthy, if Garrett Green takes another step, if Alan Bowman, just because of the system they're in. You know, I could see it going a bunch of ways.
What about Gary Bohannon?
No.
At BYU. All right.
No.
KJ Jefferson at UCF?
Nope.
So he threw for 2,000 at Arkansas last year. I would assume it's similar. I think they'll run the ball a lot there with RJ Harvey and the kid from Toledo. Where'd they get their running back from? They had another 1,000-yard rusher they added this offseason.
Oh, good.
Yeah. They have 2 really good running backs.
Yeah,
Same with Cincinnati. I think they'll run the ball too.
Yeah.
With Brendan Sorsby at quarterback. I like it. I went Fafita, Bowman, Becht, Barron, Shador in my top 5 in no order.
Rob, you're emerging as a bit of a Cam Rising hater.
The guy's an absolute buffoon. What do you mean emerging? The guy's been a buffoon. Did you see him at Big 12 Media Days?
He went to 2 Rose Bowls.
The guy is an absolute buffoon.
What do you mean? He's a footballer. He might be a meathead, but he's a dude.
He's a nerd.
What?
Cam Rising. What do you mean what? The guy's a goober.
What are you talking about?
Cam Rising?
Cameron Bad Moon Rising.
We're talking about Cameron Rising, the Utah quarterback?
Yeah.
He threw for 2,400 yards in 13 games in 2021. Electric. He did have that 4-1, 20-5 touchdown interception ratio. And then 2022, he threw for 3,300.
Yeah, but he runs for 500 yards every season too. 6 tutties with his feet.
With, after a year off with injuries, 2 years off? Year off, excuse me.
1 year off. He's a dude. He's obviously a top 5 quarterback in this league.
Toledo Toledo was where the running back came from.
Yeah, you know what? I don't want to like bring up, rehash old stuff, but when I told you Garrett Green was a dude last year, you rolled your eyes at me, and he's a dude. And now
No.
I'm not like going out on a limb here saying Cam Rising.
That is disingenuous. You know why I rolled my eyes.
Yeah, you have a blanket cop out for anything West Virginia related that you didn't like their head coach who won 9 games last year.
No, I didn't. I said I didn't trust Neil Brown to run a good offense, and he did last year.
Dudes are dudes. Garrett Green's a dude.
Okay.
I knew it. You didn't know it. Now everybody knows it.
You're obfuscating.
But see, Cam Rising, I'm not like going out on a limb here. He's like a 2-time all Pac-12 champ, Rose Bowl guy. You're just, I don't know. You're just a Cam Rising hater.
I am a Cam Rising hater. I'm a Utah hater.
I respect that.
Utah's going to flop.
I hope you're right. Money, you got to break this tie for us. Is Cam Rising a good quarterback or no?
I need 12 more games to decide.
He can get to 2,500 in the Big 12. I think we're going to see some offense here.
It is interesting that like the only highlight that comes to mind when I hear his name is him just getting absolutely flattened and his helmet flying off.
Rob, that's what this dates back to. Is we were watching the USC versus Utah Pac-12 championship game, and you were like, Utah is going to win, and they were like already down by 6 or something in the fourth quarter. I was like, there's no way. And I think you've hated Cam Rising ever since he clutched up and won that game.
You mean I thought USC was going to win?
Yeah, that's what I meant.
They should have.
You can hold a grudge, man, and I respect it. You've been mad at Neil Brown since like 2011, and you've held on to that.
Look,
and now you're mad at Cam Rising.
NASCAR Neil should have lost the Texas Tech game because he started throwing the ball with Garrett Green, and Garrett Green can't throw the ball well. He's a really good football player. He's just not a great quarterback. Their offense flatlined when he started throwing the ball late in that game, and he kept Texas Tech in it when they could have just run all over Texas Tech to finish that game.
What game?
The game in Morgantown where Baron Morton had a shot and Jay New York jumped 7 seconds too early for a pass over the middle.
Last
already
year?
landed the ball past him, yeah.
Garrett Green didn't even play in that game. It was Nico Marchiol.
Oh, yeah, it was at the end. It was Nico Marchiol. That's what I'm remembering. You're right.
Thank God we didn't get Garrett Green that day. We would have lost by 30 up there.
That's true. But he started throwing the ball. Fact remains that he started throwing the ball late when he shouldn't have.
That's true.
I
NASCAR.
forgot that was Nico Marchiol. What a guy. Well,
hey, hey, if you're listening to this and you own a business, you manage a business, and you want to sponsor us, you may not know this, but football season is right around the corner, and we'll have somewhere between, I don't know, like 500 weekly listeners and 1 million weekly listeners. If you want to advertise to that audience, we will promote your business on this podcast. So hit us up on Twitter or Gmail or wherever. And let's get the ball rolling on that. We'll get you hooked up football all the way through basketball season. So September through, let's call it April 1st. All right, what's next, Rob?
I did see this post from Message Board Geniuses I wanted to get your thoughts on. Could Arch Manning get snaps at running back? He's a big guy who has an athletic ability. I could see another Roschon Johnson scenario. Do you think Arch Manning is as athletic as Roschon Johnson?
No.
No.
And
Not even close.
It's terrible because this is like, I feel like I have college football 25 brain rot. And like I ended up with 2 really good quarterbacks on my roster and wanted to use both of them. but I'm a big scrambler guy. Like, I've got to have a guy who can move in the pocket. You've got to have mobile dead eye. You got to be able to use your feet, throw on the run. And so all the quarterbacks that I recruit are really agile. And so I'll throw one of my younger guys in the backfield and make him a running back for a year, then switch him back over to quarterback. Hurts his overall a little bit. But if I know he's going to sit a year after anyways, I'll do it. But I feel like this is just like completely blurring the lines between what is real and what is not. And to think that Texas would use a quarterback prospect like Arch Manning in the run game, it's just wild to me.
Yeah, I will say, I looked him up. Arch Manning is bigger than Roschon Johnson, which does not seem real. He's 6'4", 225, and Roschon was 6 foot, 225. But Roschon just athletically is built like a running back, and Arch is not. I think people see those 1A Louisiana highlights, and I think he's more athletic than he is.
What are you guys talking about?
Arch Manning seeing time at running back this year.
Yeah, I don't see that happening.
No. Let's get the guy hurt who is the future of the franchise here in the SEC. Chelsea Miles Cole gets some tackles for loss there for the Jaguars.
Sure did.
He looks good. I didn't see Tyree Wilson do much against J.J. McCarthy because J.J. McCarthy was lighting up the Raiders.
He's goated already, as far as I'm concerned.
Game 1, what'd you think, Kyle?
Yeah, I always love that pick. So let's ride.
Oh man. All right. I mean, we can keep talking here. Do you have any thoughts on the Texas Tech before we get out of here? Do you have We're going to talk O-line on Wednesday. We did see some offensive line news break this week. I think we should save that for the Wednesday episode. Do you have any scrimmage thoughts from the coaching staff and what they said after the first scrimmage?
Well, Dylan Spencer is out for the year. That's the big one. There was some, it's hard to decipher even when you watch a scrimmage. Let's say the defense dominates. You go, okay, do we have a great defense or a bad offense? It's even harder to decipher through a coach's comments when he says, oh, this guy or this position group had a good day. But that was the big takeaway, was Dylan Spencer, the true sophomore edge player, out for the year, non-contact injury. I think he said day 1 or day 2 of camp. So that stings. Unfortunately, it happens. I feel like I've seen that around the Big 12, a handful of teams losing some guys for the year. I guess if there's a silver lining, it is one of those positions that we felt like you had a lot of depth at, and we covered that on our D-line preview. But still, you hate to see those numbers dwindle and take away that depth advantage. And he also, I thought, was one of the higher-end players that, as a true freshman, it's hard to kind of even approach your ceiling. But with another year under his belt, maybe he was a guy that could have had a higher ceiling than some other players at that position. So wish him a full and speedy recovery, and hopefully he'll bounce back next year. But that was kind of the main takeaway I had from what we know of that first scrimmage.
Money, any thoughts on Tech football before we move on, or basketball?
Yeah, it's hard when you're not watching it and you're just relying on what you're reading. But I read that Mo Horn looked really good, which I think is great news for the secondary. That's been a position that I've been kind of keeping tabs on throughout the offseason, and I think having another good corner would be great for this defense. Offensive line still kind of sounds like a work in progress. I think that's going to be kind of something to monitor the next couple of weeks is, does anybody really solidify those inside starting spots? What does the, starting 5 look like week 1 against ACU? I think that's probably the most interesting situation for me to monitor right now. Even Caleb Rogers, like the most proven, solidified guy on your line, still kind of moving around to try and fill the gaps on what you're missing on the interior. So I think offensive line remains kind of a question mark and a situation to monitor, which is maybe not what you had hoped for.
Yeah, I think there's two ways to interpret that. The bigger takeaway to me was that Sterling Porcher, by the way, I called him Sterling Porcher. Didn't realize he had that certain je ne sais quoi about him, and it's actually Porcher. He's splitting time with Dalton Merriman at left tackle. So one way you could interpret that is, okay, this Merriman kid is coming on, and now we've got two guys that appear to the coaches like they're starting caliber left tackles. That kind of competition is good. That kind of depth is good. Or you could interpret that as Sterling Porcher is disappointed, and they're looking at another body to see if somebody else can step up. Obviously, that enhances your tackles depth if Merriman is that kind of player, even if he doesn't quite beat out Porcher for that starting spot. And then the flexibility of Rodgers to play inside or outside kind of fudges the numbers a little bit. Like you might have, so there's four guys competing on the interior: Scurry, Sheridan Wilson, Davion Carter, and Caleb Rogers. That's four. And now you've got four competing on the outside: Merriman and Porcher at left tackle, Ty Buchanan, Caleb Rogers at right tackle. It's seven people because Caleb Rogers is double, but that's kind of like eight guys you can play across those five spots. That could be good from a depth standpoint. So I don't know. I wish we could have had eyes on that scrimmage. I certainly feel more confident about the defensive line as a unit. And so to hear that they kind of won up front is not necessarily a surprise. I think our defensive line will beat a lot of offensive line units. But if it was so drastic and that gap was so wide that, offensive line is going to be a real liability, then that is kind of a different conversation. So I hope, especially with that left tackle spot, it's more so the case that Merriman is emerging as a bona fide player and not that Porcher is underwhelming or kind of losing his grip on that starting spot. But I guess we'll know soon enough. We may not know in 20 days when you play ACU, but 27 days when you play on the road at Washington State, I think you'll know a little bit.
Also saw a couple of things about Dre McCray having a really good day. And so, maybe he deserves more consideration in this wide receiver room especially on like screen looks, quick passes. Maybe he remains a good depth piece to have in that receiver room. I think I might have discredited him a little bit when we did our wide receiver preview, but I think, he's proven to have some explosiveness and some dynamic, route running and yak in this offense. And so I think if he can continue to pave out a consistent role in that aspect, it just bodes even better for your receiver room.
Or any Olympic thoughts? We tied China.
Yeah, do we get to officially claim the tiebreaker there?
Well, we tied and we won the most silvers and bronze, so I guess that's the tiebreaker.
They really need to move to like a 3-2-1 scoring system.
Yeah.
I don't want to get political on this podcast.
You never do.
But, there is an interesting, let's call it interesting, race unfolding for president. You've got, two major party candidates. There's been kind of some crazy stuff in both of those respective primaries. And then you've got a third guy, RFK. He's got the worm, the bear, just an interesting dynamic there. That's all I'm not pro or against anybody. If I were running for president, what I would do, I would appeal to the common man, and I would say, look, college football is crazy. There's all this money now. We've got NIL, these TV contracts. Big Ten makes $1 billion a year. Do you know what $1 billion in like the federal budget is? I mean, it's tiny. It's nothing. I would run for president and say, here's what we're going to do. And it's perfect timing, too, because the Summer Olympics is the summer right before the November general election. I would make as a focal point of my campaign, I'd have like two other things. This would be in the top three. Say, we're going to invest billions and billions of dollars in the Olympic sports system in this country so that we never have to tie China or lose to the French in any sport ever again. And we're going to invest, we're going to pay some guy 6 figures to be really good at rowing and, skeet shooting and breakdancing and 3-on-3 basketball. We will never, ever, ever go on the world stage again and tie anybody in gold medals. We'll win like all of them. We'll win 70% of the gold medals with just this pretty minuscule investment. Because I think there's a correlation. You look at the countries at the top of the Olympics, and this is kind of a chicken and egg thing, but you look at the countries at the top of that list with the most gold medals.
Really good country.
The best countries are all over that list. So it's the U.S., it's China, it's France, it's South Korea, Japan, Australia. Generally the kind of country, I guess China notwithstanding, that you would kind of want to aspire to be. That generally speaking is like pro-human rights, pro-democracy, pro-free enterprise. The people there, good per capita GDP, all that good stuff, high quality of life. So you want to be good at sports because being good at sports is a reflection of like the overall health of the country. You don't have, I don't know, Sierra Leone dominating the Olympics. You don't have Paraguay dominating the Olympics. Canada, total loser country, Canada. Not really. That's a straight shot at Canada. But we could do this with very little money in the grand scheme of things. Like, let's pay all the Olympic sports like we pay football. It'll be tax funded, and it'll be something. There's a lot of things my tax dollars go to that I object to, and I think it's ridiculous. But if my tax rate went up, 0.0001% to make us always the very best without question at the Olympics, I would probably say okay. And I think a lot of Americans, especially in the swing states, your independent-minded voters, your lower propensity voters that aren't partisan loyalists would get on board with that message. They would say, yeah, we want to win at the Olympics, and they would vote for that candidate. So if ever there was a time to break through, I feel like it's this cycle, but nobody carried the right message. So okay, sorry to get all political, but I'll shut up now.
Let's see. Tobogo from Botswana. Did you see this? He won gold in the men's 200. World champion in what? Noah Lyles lost. From Botswana, he is receiving a 4-bedroom house from the Botswanan government. $1 million in Pula. I guess $1 million Pula. That's 75 grand in United States currency. $3,600 for reaching both the 100-meter and 200-meter finals. A national holiday on his name. And overall, he's getting about $260,000 and a 4-bedroom house for winning a gold medal.
You know what we could do? This was an old segment on, can't remember if it was like Mike and Mike or SVP and Rosillo, but they were talking about like the highest honor that any individual person could receive, like in anything. And they were talking about, if you have a statue somewhere of yourself, that's one of them said, if you have a highway named after you. And I think where they landed, no pun intended, was that if you have an airport named after you, that is like pretty much, that's a huge deal. You're like flying into Orlando and they're like, welcome to Mainville International Airport in Orlando, Florida or something. I say if you win an Olympic gold medal in the U.S., you get your hometown airport named after you until somebody else from your hometown wins a gold medal, and then it changes hands. And give them some money, but we can't go and tie ever again. We have to just dominate. We need more gold medals than the rest of the world combined. I would run on that I wouldn't. Somebody should run on that platform, and they would win.
You almost slipped up there, Kyle.
I would vote for them.
If elected, you would not run?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Here's a good, Rob, you're a big comms and branding guy, marketing guy. You say, we're not voting red or blue this election.
We're voting gold.
We're going for gold.
Oh, that's good. That is good. All right, I have 2 more things. First, this. YouTube, this isn't our content. Don't strike us.
Let's show them who the real horse is. This is our team. Go Colts!
I propose that we have a season-long bet between the three of us in something, and the loser has to sing a Texas Tech song on the internet.
Are you familiar with what that original song is? Because it makes it like 10 times funnier.
It's a worship song, yes.
Yeah.
I can't place the worship song, but it is I recognize it as a worship song.
I kind of, now that you say that, this is our God, this is our King.
Yeah.
We love him.
Do you think that was bad on purpose, or do you think he was like trying and it wound up funny?
No, I believe this gentleman is earnest. That's
Honestly,
I'll say that.
our good friend Jody S. Laughter has so many Texas Tech AI songs out there by now. We could just like learn one of those, or he could prompt a new one about like making it really embarrassing, and whoever has the worst record against the spread this year has to do it or something.
Yeah,
I'm a little nervous to do that in a three-way race because my odds of losing that are pretty good. I would like to expand the field a little bit if we can.
Sure, we can. We've got a group that we did it with last year that I believe I was supposed to do the punishment for, and I have not done it yet.
You're not a welcher, are you, Rob?
Listen here, Kyle. Let's not bring up welching on bets. I believe you have some outstanding warrants out there as well.
Like what? Name two.
Were you supposed to eat a hot chip or something that you welched on?
Yeah, but I didn't think we were actually going to win that game, so it doesn't count.
Okay. That's the one I was thinking of.
That's only one, though. You made it sound like it was a pattern of behavior there.
I could think of some more if you gave me time. Final thing I had to bring up was Pitbull. Pitbull Stadium there at FIU in Miami, Mr. Worldwide. Is this a good trade-off? For $1 million a year, $1.2 million a year over 5 years, Pitbull will be referred to as the official entrepreneur of FIU athletics. Pitbull is granted the right to use the stadium for up to 10 days annually during the agreement's term, based rental fee waived. A limited number of tickets will be set aside for FIU students at a discounted rate when he does his shows. His vodka brand will be the preferred vodka in the stadium club. Pitbull affiliated performers will perform at halftime or post games of home games. And a football suite will be reserved for Pitbull or designed Pitbull protege at FIU home games. A total of 40-person capacity with 20 VIP parking places annually during the agreement's term. Pitbull will also help create an FIU anthem, which I can't wait for. He'll also do 12 social media posts per year and appear at one athletics fundraising event per year for a 3-hour time block. Both sides get a good trade deal there.
I on my personal Twitter account, I asked one time, like, is Green Day the most famous band / musician ever to be like that famous and that not good at what they do? And I still think they're up there. They might be the answer to that question. But after thinking about it more, I was like, I would hear an argument for Pitbull in this conversation. Because I've never understood it. I don't get the appeal. I don't see any talent. And for a while there, he was, I don't know, top 3, top 5 musicians for like a pretty long time. He's had some longevity now by this point. I don't understand why that guy is famous.
Yeah, well, it makes sense in the context of FIU's in Miami, yes.
Okay, so is the University of Miami, and I'm sure Pitbull could afford a suite and, a speaker's fee there. FIU is like, okay, I was recruited to play Division III football And it's like it's an interesting process, but one of the quote unquote visits I was on, we were in like a classroom with the other quote unquote prospects. If you're going D3, you don't have many prospects, so I use that term loosely. One of the guys in the classroom with me wound up playing at FIU, and he was like a D3 commit at one point. That's kind of like where FIU is at as a program. So if you're world famous like Pitbull, I don't know why you bother with this affiliation. Seems like a better deal for FIU, and I've given way too much thought on this ridiculous topic. So I count me as not understanding this at all.
Money?
I love it. Give me Cody Campbell Field at Josh Abbott Stadium. I want it all. Mr. Worldwide.
That was my next question. Who would you get for Texas Tech? I don't think I would lean Josh Abbott. I might go Flatland Cavalry Stadium. Get Cleto in there in the suites. I don't know. I'm pretty neutral on it, but I do think that FIU and Pitbull got a pretty good deal there. But I do think it's much better for FIU than it is for Pitbull. I don't think Pitbull gets much out of it except for paying $1 million for suites and 10 days at FIU Stadium.
What's Natalie Maines up to these days?
Writing music with the Chicks, I believe.
You know the Lubbock crowd would love that, right?
I don't know that you would sell out any more games if Natalie Maines was on the stadium. Chick Stadium, I don't think would go over well, no. I believe her uncle or dad also blocked me on Twitter, and I don't know why.
I think he has blocked a lot of people that he's never interacted with, so there's...
Yeah.
Yeah.
He probably heard me on the radio one time, and... I was going through my photos this week and deleting a bunch of old photos because I was running out of space on my phone. And I had a lot of screenshots talking about grudges of like people talking trash on my articles from Facebook comment sections and Twitter DMs. There's one I wrote about Cliff Kingsbury maybe breaking up with his girlfriend or something. And this lady DM'd me that I was a garbage human and nobody would ever want to take in my content. And there's a lot of vomiting emojis. So I deleted some of those. I kept some of them. You got to keep your edge, but there was quite a few in there that I moved on from. I buried.
Money, do you have an edge there you've been a content creator for a while? Do you remember do you save and hold on to that criticism when you receive it, or how do you handle that?
I used to take it really personally. Maybe it helps now that I don't have anything that's super public facing. But 2 years ago, you could have asked me who pisses you off the most in your Twitter comments, and I would have had 5 names right off the bat. And they're still active too.
The only thing that kind of triggered me, just because it logically made no sense, was when I did more writing and not in response to a single article, but somebody would just try to insult you to be like, yeah, this is garbage, just like everything you write. I'm like, okay, if you don't like what I write, that's fine. But it sounds like you've read a lot of it to cast that wide of a judgment. And if it's that bad, why do you keep reading it? Or if you haven't read it, how would you know it's garbage? It feels like it's a little bit of a contradiction, but I don't know.
Yeah. There was one where this guy was who's somebody on Facebook was like, who is this Rob guy? And the guy responded, oh, I've listened to him on this station and this station and this show and this show, and I read his stuff on this place. He's terrible. And I just responded, thanks for listening, man.
Yeah, it's like, dude, you're my number one fan.
Obviously, you know who I am, and you take in all of my content.
Yeah.
He's on the tailgate show on KKM and on Ryan Hyde's show, and he has his own show, and it's he knows my schedule.
That's kind of my response now. Is just the Jack Sparrows. So you have heard of me.
Yeah.
I also the other thing that earnestly does trigger me is when somebody like pins a take or an opinion on you that you never said. Like this happened last year when I think it was maybe one of the games that, well, I can't remember, but they were like, "Are you finally going to admit that like Baron Morton should be the starting quarterback?" And I was like, I was on the Rob Bro Tailgate show in 2021 saying the season is lost. Just start Baron Morton at quarterback. I don't care. These are true freshmen. Like let's get him some reps. So don't come at me in 2023 talking about like, am I ready to? Like I've been ready. I've been there, and I thought both.
Always bring that up that I laughed at you in that moment, and there's just no truth to that.
You cut to break.
There's no.
You're like that. Is that in the archive somewhere? Can we pull that? Do you have inside sources at KKAM?
No, not back that far. No.
Money, other listeners, here's exactly how that went down. We were close to a break, and I was like, "Can I say one more?" We were not talking about Baron Morton at all. Like we weren't even talking quarterback, nothing. I was like, "Can I say one more thing on that? Because I have kind of a hot take." And Rob was like, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." And I said, "I think Baron Morton should start at quarterback today." There was like a 3-second pause, and Rob goes, "We're going to take the break." And like it was just so dismissive, like it was this absolute cornball opinion, and I stand by it. So
it was in his true freshman season.
Yeah.
In 2020 or 2021?
2021, and admittedly, it would have gone horrible. It was the Oklahoma State game when we got shut out. But still, the reps would have been nice to have. That's all I'm saying.
But that was finally when we went to Donovan. So
2021.
Oklahoma State, that was right after the Iowa State game. That can't be right. Well, I'm thinking 2022. I think we're
No. You're right. You're right.
21.
It must have been earlier in the season than like Kansas. It might have been Kansas because it was like,
okay, that makes more sense.
Hey, I think like why start Henry Columbia at Kansas because Kansas wasn't good yet. I was like, this is the time to like we're gonna win this game regardless. Let's get Morton some reps. I think it was about there.
So I was probably just on the Donovan train at that point because he had already played some. And
yeah, which I was also for that versus, whatever else we had going on at that point in time.
I was all in on the young guys at that point, though.
I think both. I know. I asked the TCU folks, like, did you pick the wrong quarterback? The way Donovan Smith ended with Sonny Cumbie in 2021, especially with like the bowl game, I get it, but I'm a little surprised that he wasn't a little bit more seriously considered to be the starter in 2022. And I know his new coaching staff, new offense. I don't know. I'll always kind of wonder about that.
I would have picked Donovan over Tyler Shuck. I finally seen some Tyler Shuck highlights on the game, though. People are playing with Louisville now. There's one where he threw a pick six
to the sideline.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
I know it wasn't somebody undercutting her out over the middle. I know it was to the sideline.
No, it was one read the whole time too. He's just staring to the right side of the field.
It was deep over the middle, but it was an online game, and so the guy was like cussing him out afterwards. It was.
They were also talking about Chandler Morris.
Perfect played against Tyler Shuck online the other day.
Oh, that's random.
Yeah.
The TCU folks were talking about how Chandler Morris is like the best quarterback in shorts. I've never seen fall camp, but that's my theory is that Tyler Shuck at Oregon, at Texas Tech under two coaching staffs, just looks amazing in drills, no contact stuff. Like, and he was okay in games. I think he like maybe gets a bad rap. I don't think he was just some like dreadful figure that had no talent.
Except for Oregon, yeah.
But the way they just talked about it was like, oh yeah, NFL draft pick, like he's obviously the number one guy, and then like you line up for games, you're like, yeah, he's mediocre. He's like, his ceiling is like really solid, and his floor is like it's hard to win with this guy.
Oklahoma game in 2022 was the perfect showing of Tyler Shuck.
Wasn't their defense
so bad? They were bad. He was so bad in the first quarter and a half, and then was like really good for a quarter and a half, and then was like the reason we went to overtime. And they flat out dropped 2 interceptions late in that game that would have ended it.
Yeah, then I kind of thought, because like Iowa State in the cold and then Ole Miss, like he had a lot of success running the ball. And I was like, okay, we've unlocked kind of a new element of the offense here. He's a good runner. And I thought that from the time he arrived here, but that was when we kind of first saw it that consistently. And then we go to Laramie, and like he does not run the ball until the last possession of the fourth quarter when we're losing and like need to tie it up to go to overtime. And I was like, this is the only time the offense looked kind of cohesive last year was when he had 15 carries a game, and now we're not doing it. And then as soon as we started doing it in Laramie, we moved the sticks and get a pretty clutch score to force overtime. And then we went way overboard with it the next week. It was like, yeah, let's just run quarterback power 30 times and not hand the ball to Taj, who's averaging 10 yards per carry this season. Wild.
All right, final thoughts?
Did I have anything in my notes? Is this like a final thoughts? Like we're going to go for 30 more minutes, or you want to wrap the show up?
Well, I thought we were wrapping up.
Yeah, no, I don't have anything else.
Money?
Cam Brown, QB2.
I'm in. I'm in for him being QB 1B and letting him play quite a bit in the red zone and not throwing in the red zone. All right.
Please sponsor our podcast.
We'll join you on Wednesday on Patreon, patreon.com/Gamblin Gauchos, talking offensive line. Please sponsor our podcast. Kyle.
Love y'all.